girls, just to let you know before the show starts, Diddy needs your help. He's in poverty of a very, very drastic level. He needs your help. As you can see by his audio quality, which is, it's rough. And I'm sad. I'm worried about him. I'm legitimately worried. Will he eat tonight? Who knows? Who knows? The only people that can help him are you guys, because I'm in poverty too. So, please buy a t-shirt. I make like $4. I'll give him, $3.50 off of it. I make $4 off of all this shit. T-shirts, sweaters, hoodies, fucking socks. I got your shame blocker mask on, all that stuff. So, help Diddy. Help me help Diddy to help you. Buy some shit, please. All right, to the show. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself because I have no idea what title to give you because it seems like you've got a bunch. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself.
Okay, well, my name is David Chace, Chace, um, and I'm an illustrator, and I've been since like 1991, I guess, when I met my first contactee. I've been doing illustrations of UFO occupants, uh, but then in 2015, I had for the first time in my life, my own unambiguous paranormal experience, which didn't involve UFO occupants as far as we know, but it involved something or other.
Yeah. So Diddy, you know a little bit about that. You're more versed in that than I am. So what have you heard about the so just David, real quick, just because we've spoke already and I already know roughly what you're talking about, but for the people that don't, do you mind, elaborating a little bit on what you experienced and
Yeah, certainly. Um, well, so it was September 3rd, 2015. Uh, now I was at a gathering. I mean, basically it lasted. That was Thursday, and I guess the gathering had started like the previous weekend. And it was at a lake house, small house on the lake in rural Maine. So there was a lot of very wooded area, um,
Okay.
and basically the people who had gathered there are pretty much all. It was like invite only for. There's Audrey and Debbie were doing these conferences, and they're like twin sisters. And then the conferences they were. This was Experiencers Speak. I believe in 2015 would be the fourth Experiencer Speak conference. And then after the conference, they'd invite a bunch of people, mostly abductees and contactees or speakers at the conference, to attend this gathering at the lake house. And so, it'd been an interesting week, but nothing really unambiguously paranormal had happened as far as I was concerned, until that Thursday, when I mean, it's a long story, but basically, uh, gradually over the course of the week, people were leaving. We started out like over the weekend, we had like 50 people there at once, and then people would set up tents in the yard and camp. But then people would leave. Like a lot of people left like Monday or Tuesday, and then by Thursday afternoon, there were just like 8 people left, and then at about 1:30, I guess Steve left at about 1:30 p.m. And then there were just 7 of us. And so there was Nancy, who was in the house, so she kind of missed out on all this. But there was me, there was Debbie, there was Audrey, there was Lee, there was Raquel, there was Sandy. I think that's everyone. Um, and about 1:30 p.m., I'm like hanging out in the living room, and then Audrey calls us all out onto the deck in back, from which you can see the house is next to this wooded gully, and so there's a tree coming down in the gully, and this is the first time in my life I've ever actually seen a tree fall down, and it was like coming down in stages, and it seemed like there was almost like some kind of invisible force that was like twisting it or shaking it or making it come down a little at a time. And
Wow.
I don't know if that was just like the soil eroding. I mean, I still don't know what this was, but I know that I started taking pictures, and like if you look at the timestamps on my camera, the first photos are like about 1:40, 1:45 p.m. And then I know then I took pictures at about 2 o'clock when I was sitting at the rim of the gully with Debbie and Audrey, and we were actually looking. When the tree had mostly fallen down by that point, although it still was not settled into the ground entirely, and we were looking at the top of the tree, which was now kind of like bushes lying on the ground,
Right.
and something seemed to be moving, that some of the branches would sink down and then spring back up again, and then they'd sink down in another place. So it was like something was moving in the tree, but we couldn't see anything. And I was making jokes about the movie The Predator, which has this
Yeah.
invisible alien that hunts
Yeah.
and climbs around in the treetops, and and of course, irrationally in my mind, I was thinking, okay, maybe there's tension in the branches, and there's other branches hidden underneath the branches we can see, and the tree slips a little more, and some of the branches break, and that releases tension, and the branches
Yeah.
spring up. But it looked kind of too convincing. Um, but a little after 2 o'clock, I went back into the house. It's like the activity seemed to quiet down, and so I went back inside, and then at some point that afternoon, Debbie and I were doing. She'd seen an alien like a couple years prior that she calls Hartley because he has a heart-shaped head, and I was doing a drawing of Hartley. I was like working with her as a sketch artist, uh, and then I hear that Raquel has gone down into the gully, and and then Raquel comes back up, and she sends Lee down, and then I hear Lee shout, "Bloody effing hell!" And he's British, so
Yeah.
and he comes running up out of there like something totally freaked him out, uh, and it piqued my curiosity. I wonder what this was that he saw down there, because at this point, if I had gone home at that point, I would have been able to convince myself that had just seen tension in the branches. Uh, but
Right.
anyway, I finished doing my drawing with Debbie, and and then so now I'm curious. Now Lee and Raquel are both down there, and I hear like Raquel's telling Lee, "Don't be jumpy, Lee. Respect it," and they're sitting. So I start walking down, because earlier at two o'clock the tree was still too unstable looking, so I didn't want to go down and look because I didn't want to be crushed by a tree.
Yeah.
But now, like I see Lee and Raquel are sitting there, so it must be safe enough to sit down. So I will walk down there, and then I see. So this is the moment where it like really hits me that I get down there. The Lee and Raquel are sitting on the ground just a little ways in front of me, and then right in front of them is like the top of the tree, which is now like bushes in front of them, and I see something move, like a big movement in the bushes, the top of the tree in front of me there, which is just a few feet away from me at this point. And it's like, okay, so I see that. Okay, so the first thought comes into my mind is they're watching an animal. That's what it is. There's an animal climbing around in the branches, and that's because I know that kind of movement can only be caused by an animal.
Yeah.
Uh, and and at the same time, now I start looking for the animal, because I know, okay, so what is it? That's a big movement. It must be like a raccoon or a porcupine, because we'd had porcupines on the property before. So I'm like looking, I'm seeing, okay, I'm not seeing that. It must be a smaller animal like a squirrel or a bird or something. I'm looking and I'm not seeing any animal. And I say, okay, in my mind, I'm saying to myself, I know that movement was caused by an animal. I know that if it was caused by an animal, I'd be able to see the animal, and I know that I can't see the animal. So it's like there's a logical
Right.
contradiction there,
Yeah.
that whatever it was we determined, we were looking, there's no like if you remember the movie The Predator, you could see a distortion of light, like a silhouette where he was.
Yeah.
But this was perfect invisibility. There was nothing like that. There was no distortion. It just, we could see whatever this was. It had weight, and it had physical strength because it would like shake the branches, and it had weight because it would like, the branches would sink down when it was there, and then when it would jump to a different location, the branches where it had been would spring back up, and then in the new location, the branches would sink down again.
Wow.
And there were multiple. There was like smaller ones, and then there was at least one or maybe two large ones. The small ones were maybe the size of monkeys, because when I saw the branches move from the small ones, the first thought that popped into my head was like, oh, this is like a marmoset, or like one of those small South American monkeys. But the big one must have been like 200 pounds or something. I was thinking like a small gorilla or a big chimpanzee, because it had like real weight and strength to it. And we think it's probably the big one that brought down the tree to begin with.
Ooh. Wow. Man. All right, Diddy. What do you know about this kind of stuff?
That's I mean, well, first, David, man, thanks for talking to us about this, man. I really appreciate you coming out and sharing this with us, man. Because I know it's like, I know it's hard to do that kind of stuff. But so when Josh first told me about this, there's this series out called Missing 411, and it's authored by a man named David Paulides, and he used to be he was a cop, I think, but he investigates cases that are people missing in national parks, and the circumstances are really like just weird. It's not they're not usual missing circumstances or whatever. But a lot of the people that he interviews, they see things like that. It's like you said, it's almost like the Predator, where it's like a coping device, and they see things moving around the trees. They don't see the actual thing, but they can tell that there's they're just moving up there, and it's almost exactly like how you described it. So I was wondering if you ever heard that series before.
Well, yeah, I don't think I've ever watched it or anything, but I'm familiar. There are books. There's like, I think he's got 2 or 3 books. David Paulides, or however you pronounce his name, and
yes, sir.
Yeah, Missing 411. And I know he has a book on Bigfoot, and I have that book, and that was, because when we were going through the possibilities of what is this, like first thing, okay, it's like a paranormal primate, okay, could it be Bigfoot? But it wasn't like Bigfoot. You think of it as like huge, like 8 feet tall, 1,000 pounds or whatever, and this thing was smaller than that. And this thing seemed more like an arboreal primate. But yeah, I am familiar with his research.
So go ahead, Diddy.
No, I was just wondering, like, David, I'm curious, what do you think these entities were? Like,
that was what I was going to ask.
What do you? I'm sorry. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah. So here's the thing: is I can describe what I experienced, and Lee and Debbie actually came down and joined us as well. And then Audrey observed some of it from the rim earlier in the afternoon. And then Sandy, she was also there and observed some of this from the rim of the gully earlier. But so I can't tell you what it was. We just know what we experienced. And, it's basically, all I can say is if you're watching a nature documentary and you see like there's some monkeys and apes climbing in a tree, but then they digitally remove the monkeys and apes and all you have is the movement of the branches, that's what it was. And it was like we were thinking about, like, okay, if there were actually monkeys and apes like right in front of us, just like 2 or 3 feet away, which they were that close at times, it's like, shouldn't there be an odor, because usually primates have scent glands and you would expect to smell something. We couldn't smell anything. There's no breath. We could not hear any vocalizations, no odor. We didn't hear the sound of them breathing. So it's almost like they weren't quite, you know, trying to figure out, trying to explain what this was like. It was like they were there, that their weight was on the branches and their physical strength could shake the branches, but they weren't like in our dimension, like breathing our air or something like that. They were like just outside of our dimension, you know. And Raquel actually had the feeling that maybe what this was a not so much a family of primates, but actually some kind of like intelligence that was just mimicking the movements that would be produced by that, but is like maybe some kind of amorphous single intelligence that we can't understand. Or so I can't tell you what it was.
Yes.
But my own inclination is to just go with, okay, interdimensional apes, you know. I don't know if that means what that means. I guess, I mean, my bottom line conclusion was that there's something about the nature of physical reality and other forms of life. There's something that our science doesn't understand, that our physics doesn't understand, but there are other forms of life that can exploit that, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's interesting too. And since I've been doing research for this episode and trying to find somebody to do it. Before I landed with you, I had been doing research on crop circles and things like that, and I learned more about them. It's more weird than just the image being, you know, imposed on a crop, you know, inexplicably. But what I learned is that there's actual measurable differences in magnetic energy and different various, I'm not a scientist, so different various types of energy that it's different there. And the crops afterwards have an increase in like 50% protein and 25% larger crop. They grow better. It's very weird. They've measured that people's blood lipid count goes down after laying in it for you know, X amount of time. So what I'm getting at with that is there is energy that's measurable that we don't understand already. So it's not too far-fetched to believe that there's, you know, there could be some type of paranormal or some type of, you know, living being in that same realm of existence, so to speak, that we definitely don't understand either. Magic, as they call it, you know, everything, every piece of science that we don't understand, you know, is always called magic. But it's weird to me that no one felt like you didn't mention anybody being scared like at all. And that's, for some reason, that that strikes me as odd. I can imagine that I'd be a little, you know, a little nervous about that.
Yeah.
Was there like a sense of like wellness, or
Well,
like, how did you feel?
remember the first, when I was doing the drawing with Debbie, we were sitting up in the house or on the deck, I forget exactly where, but you know, Raquel had gone down there, and then she comes back up, you know, and she tells Lee to go down there and experience this for himself, and then we hear Lee shout, you know, bloody effing hell, and he comes running up, you know, it's like he's totally freaked out by it. And when Raquel first went down there, she said she got there and she saw this movement, and she continued to approach until she was like right. I don't, maybe the first move, she didn't really see the movement until she was right in front of it. But then it was almost like a huge weight dropped out of the sky, and the branches went, and she had the feeling like a big gorilla or something like that had just landed right in front of her. And I guess she compared it to the scene in the movie Predator when Arnold Schwarzenegger is, you know, he's gone over the waterfall. He's been running from the Predator, and he climbs out on the beach, and he like collapses in the mud because he's exhausted, you know. And then there's this huge splash in the water as this big invisible thing lands behind him. And it was kind of like that. So she was startled by that, but at the same time she realized, okay, this is like a warning, like don't go any further, don't like go into the top of the tree or anything. But it wasn't like it didn't seem like it was going to come chasing after her or something. So it's like she just said, okay, I'm going to sit here and experience this. If I want, I can turn around and climb up out of the gully at any time. But it's not like an alien abduction where like the aliens are totally in control. You know, this is something where she was in control. She could leave at any time.
Yeah.
So for that reason, you know, and we just didn't feel, I mean, apart from it like warning us, don't go further than this point, we didn't feel that there was any hostility or any real threat from it. But of course we were, you know, we were always aware that, okay, we don't know what this is, so there could be, but, you know, there were a group of us there, so it's not like, you know, you're alone in the dark interacting with something you don't know about or something like that.
So to just humor me for a minute, if you were the type of person that didn't believe in anything paranormal, strictly logic-based human being, right? If you were that person, how would you explain this? Say you're a scientist and you believed in science over everything. How would you explain this?
Well, that initial explanation when at 2 p.m., you know, when Debbie and Audrey and I were watching it from the rim of the gully, and I was thinking, this is, as the tree is continuing to come down, there's hidden branches, there's tension in those branches. A branch that we can't see underneath the other branches snaps. The tree slides a bit and tension's released and the branches spring up, and it just happens to look like a giant creature has jumped from one place to another. But that's the best I could do. And if I came at this like totally closed-minded about the paranormal, I think I would have had like a mental break or something, because when I got there and saw it right in front of me, I realized this has to be, you know, this is not something that we can explain in terms of any science that we know. This is, there's a movement, there's an animal causing the branches to move. If the animal is there, I would be able to see the animal, and I can't see the animal. So it's like a logical paradox in your mind. You're experiencing this, and at the same time, you know, it's impossible unless, of course, there's something paranormal, something we use paranormal. It's a placeholder term for stuff that science doesn't understand yet. But
Wow. I'll say this much, man. I can't guarantee my reaction would have been the same. My initial one, I probably would have been like your British friend, but I don't know if I'd be able to sit there and like, I don't know. It's weird to know that they could be right over your shoulder or anywhere. You know, the idea of invisibility freaks me out as it is. You know, it's just such a vulnerable position to be in. So you guys are brave. Just initially, just want to let you know that, like, that's a brave thing to me. There's no way. And then the random, seemingly random, like bushes breaking and stuff falling, like you don't know where it's coming from, and that would definitely freak me out. But I want to ask you, if you don't have any more questions about this specific topic, I want to ask him something.
Just real quick, I wanted to say it sounds a lot like Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, it does kind of sound like that. Yeah, it's a little choppy. It's a little choppy, but it's good.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna have to drop out some of those. My audio is not. But yeah, it sounds a lot like Skinwalker Ranch. It's funny because you're talking about like a higher intelligence that we can't really see, and that's how they were describing it too. It's like you know, because you say UFOs and you mentioned creatures like Bigfoot and stuff, and that those, I kind of think that those can be like individual creatures, and like, but it could be just something that's taking the form of that, like the higher intelligence that's like manipulating, you know, just like how we see things, because you know, it's almost how they describe Skinwalker Ranch is like it's almost like a portal to like a whole another area,
like a place of energy.
Where things are like slipping through, like where UFOs or something like Bigfoot or something would like slip through. So that's like, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of that, what you're saying.
Yeah, I can see that too. It definitely has like a manipulation of matter more than actual physical existence, you know, which I suppose is still, I guess that depends on how you define existence, but more than just being like, I don't know if, and I'm just speculating, but if you had reached your hand out, would you be able to touch him? You know, like, do we even know, or is it just
we tried that?
Did you?
We tried.
Y'all are braver than I thought. Wow.
There was a point after we'd been sitting there for a few minutes, we did some like meditating and whatever, and we were just watching the movements, and at a point, like, we were reaching our hands to like right where we'd seen some of these movements happening, and we were like saying, touch us, you know, go ahead and touch us, and I was like hoping to feel like maybe the skin of a monkey's paw on my hand or something like that, but we didn't feel anything. At least Lee and Raquel and I didn't. And Debbie, who was sitting behind us, said at one point she thought she felt something touch her head, but I don't know if that might have been, Debbie is very psychic, so that might have been more of a psychic thing, because I can't see how it could have reached over there without, like, you know, I don't know. So
yeah, it's funny that that's the inexplicable part, but we're not, like, we're completely fine with the rest of it. It's like, oh, well, how did you get behind me? How'd that happen? I don't know about that. The rest of it, yeah. But no, that's a crazy story, man. And I don't know, have you published any of this stuff before?
I mean, I did so that happened in September 3rd, 2015. And then at Experiencers Speak the following year, I did a talk about it. I did like a like a little slideshow where I had all my photos, you know, which is just photos of plants. So it doesn't really prove anything, but, you know, it shows what it looked like when the trees were on the ground. And then I took photos the next day. So, and then I took like a photo before going to the presentation in 2016. So I like to see how it had changed over the past year. You know, so I did that one presentation, and then I guess we did, I think it was like KGRA radio, like about a month after, like probably October 3rd, 2015. We did something, or sometime around then, where Lee and Raquel and I were actually all on being interviewed together. But apart from that, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot that we've done as far as talking about it, or, you know, presentations or anything.
Wow. So, now I'm not sure what kind of like privacy clause you have with the abductees that you've contacted or, you know, illustrated for, but I've been wondering, like, if you could, you know, tell us a couple stories of some of the weirder things that you've drawn for people, and if you could later send me, maybe email me some of these photos, and I can superimpose them on the image so that people watching can see some of your art and some of the stuff that you've done.
Yeah. Well, that, you know, I talk about what, you know, what I'm able to talk about, and which is pretty much everything except for people's names.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, except Lee and Raquel, obviously. I mean, I can use their first names; they don't have a problem with that. But as far as so I've spent since 1991, basically. I mean, basically in the late 80s, I got interested in just aliens, alien abduction, and so forth, from reading like Whitley Strieber and Bud Hopkins and so forth. But in 1991, I met Garnett Doonan, who is, and I use her full name, and she's she's an abductee, but also a contactee. She likes to consider herself a contactee, and in her case, there was a being, a female being with a glowing skin, like you know, like a light coming out from within the body. And it looked like an Egyptian-style wig, and that being's named Astartlia, and Garnett thinks of Astartlia as like her space mother, but that being would actually come into her apartment, and then there would be a smaller being that she calls Dahemi, who is like kind of like a little stocky being with like little goose pimples on his head, and he's kind of like a little dwarf or something, and he glows but with more of a dim glow. So I have illustrations of them, and then you know, that was the first person I worked with, and she's also seen a reptilian that we called Vectra. The reason we called it Vectra is because when she first saw this reptilian, then she spoke to Astartlia right afterwards, and Astartlia told her, "Soon I will tell you about Vectra." So she assumed, okay, Vectra is the reptilian. I don't know if that we ever answered that directly.
Oh,
but
it was an assumption at that point.
Yeah, but the reptilian was a guard, a very animalistic, kind of big, tough. He was guarding this room, and Garnett was wandering around this base, and which she believes is like maybe in the Puget Sound, underwater somewhere, but it's like she if she had gone into this room that the being was guarding, as she was like walking towards the room, the being like crouched down into a deep crouch and slowly turned towards her, and it was like very muscular. like almost like a bodybuilder, where you see kind of like the webbing effect under the arms from the back muscles kind of splayed across, you know, and she felt, okay, if I get any closer at this point, this thing's gonna kill me. So like she slowed down to a stop, and then like a small being came and got her and said, okay, we have to go now, you know.
And this is during during an abduction, I'm
Yeah, you'd
assuming?
call it an abduction. I mean, it was because when they take you, you know, it's not like they give you a choice, you know. It's like you know, even if you have positive feelings about the beings, you know, they're just gonna pick you up. Or sometimes people just wake up into the experience out of, they've gone to bed and suddenly they're someplace else, you know.
Yeah,
no, don't want that. Don't want that at all.
But
yo, I just have a question. Dave, can you hear me?
Yeah, he's muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, he's muted. You're good.
Okay, all right. Okay, I just wanted to I had a question. So it's weird because that kind of reminds me of like, all right, so you know how people take DMT, bro, and they feel like they're in a whole other place, right? And these entities that are, and I'm not like saying that these things aren't real. Like I totally believe this stuff is real, but I'm more interested that this stuff could all be happening in the mind. You know what I mean? Like you could like these abductions and these things like this could be happening in the mind, just like a DMT trip where it feels like you're real and you're in these totally different places. But you know, it didn't actually happen physically. I think that's actually a little bit more interesting than it actually happened physically too.
Yeah.
Because like it almost kind of goes back into what we were talking about like that higher intelligence it has no form. You know what I mean? It's communicating in some way. It probably happened in people's minds. You know, it's almost to where you feel like you were traveling somewhere, you met these entities, which you know are real, but it's you know what I mean? Like it's just your consciousness. It's really like a form of consciousness.
Like using your mind to travel. It's more like astral projection, I guess, than anything else.
Yes.
Okay, that's how I perceive most of these events, anyways. Is some kind of traveling, not of the physical body, which isn't that important, anyways, but traveling of like, you know, the spiritual, you know, your astral body, I suppose.
All right. Well, to that I can say, I mean, in a lot of cases, you just don't know. There are cases where people have experienced missing time, and when they're having that missing time episode, their roommate or their family or people in their neighborhood are actually looking for them, like, where have you gone? Like, this person,
they're actually
they'll just like mysteriously appear, and they'll not even realize they've been gone. So there are those, and then there's the cases, and I've met people who've had experiences like that where, you know, I didn't actually go and interview the family to find out, because some of these experiences happened many years ago, but I've certainly heard that those experiences happen where they're physically missing during the missing time. And then there's cases where, of course, people have physical marks show up on their body that they may remember, you know, an alien grabbing them, and then they have like a handprint and bruise marks or something like that. But then, okay, Garnett actually had experience where she knew she was out of body. She was like meditating with a Buddhist friend, and then she like felt herself like leave her body, and she was flying, and she ended up like inside a mountain where she met with Estartlia and Dehemi there. And so presumably they were all in like the astral form or whatever, but they looked physical to her at the time. So sometimes and then I've heard that there's this girl in Australia where she can have an out of body experience, but then after she comes back, something that happened out of body, she'll have a mark corresponding to what happened to her astral body. It'll show up on her physical body. So yeah, and then there's other kind of theater of the mind things that, like, I figure with DMT, I often think of it as kind of like that. It's like the way it happens in your brain is like a hallucination, but that doesn't mean that this other dimension or whatever that you're experiencing isn't actually real in some sense. Like, it's an objective reality, but it's not part of the same physical reality that we normally live in. So there's a lot of possibilities, and all of it can be going on, but I'm pretty sure that some of these experiences are physical on the same level of reality that we're in. But until we have scientific proof, I mean, who can really say?
Yeah, so that kind of brings up.
Yeah.
Sorry, Diddy, I gotta ask this question, man. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
But it kind of brings up something like I said, I've been doing research lately. But I've saw reports of people coming back from abductions. Like there's two specific events that have completely freaked me out recently. I got on Reddit the other day, which is not the greatest idea, but I got on there and there was I'm gonna superimpose this photo on there also, but there's a handprint and it's the lady was abducted or whatever, and it's going. So assume this is your leg. The handprint is like this, and it's not a handprint, it's just a fingertip print, which is odd. And the pinky is like right up on the ring finger. Now, I've never grabbed my girlfriend's leg like that ever. I don't know anybody that grabs it like they grab it from the side because you're sitting from the side, right? And the proximity from the pinky to the ring finger was odd too. And also the fact that it's all exactly the same, like diameter bruises, the same pressure, like all, how bruises change depending on the pressure applied or whatever. They're all the exact same, and it freaked me out. But that, and then there's like 14,000 of them, but the one specific one I found was about implants and doctors finding stuff that is inside a person that they'll say, hey, for one reason or another, they go and get it checked out, go and get an x-ray, and then they find like a small piece of metal with like circuitry and its own, like it's kind of alive or whatever, and the doctor's really confused. It sends it off to get it studied, and it never comes back, never gets it back. It has no idea, doesn't know what to tell his patient. There's like, hey, I sent it off and I don't know, like that's it now. And that is a red, because I have my reservations about how far I'll trust the government to be, transparent with us about stuff. And I'm 90% sure that they're just going to hold that. Okay, thank you. Let's just, okay. You didn't see it. And then just they don't owe you an explanation. You just gave them your only bargaining chip. So there's no telling how much free, tech we're giving the government just by being test subjects in the first place. And then on top of that, what are they even for? Like if we do, let's just, for the more skeptical listeners, let's just pretend we believe in all of this just for a second. I do, Diddy does, David does, but let's just pretend, right? If you believed in that, you would have to ask yourself, what is the main purpose behind implanting people with stuff, and why would the government want it? Like, why would they want it? They don't want it to, they're not too concerned with your well-being specifically. They're more concerned with interests of theirs that don't line up with the regular people anyways. Not to get on the tangent, but it's the truth. So what would you assume, if you had to, David, what would you assume that aliens are implanting people for?
Well, it's very complex. I have ideas on this. In the 1990s, from 92 to like start of 1997, Dan Wright of the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, he did an abduction transcription project, and he basically there were about 19 or 20 different like hypnotherapists and abduction researchers who participated by sending audio tapes of like hypnosis sessions and interviews, and then he had like a team of volunteers transcribe these, and they put it in a computerized database, and they came up with like, so Dan then analyzed it. They looked for common words and phrases and things that people describe, commonalities between accounts basically, and he came up with like 5 themes, and but I guess to this point, one thing he noted was that there seemed to be occasional mentions of one group of beings operating at cross purposes with another. Like an abductee might, their whole life, they are repeatedly abducted by this one group of grays. And then like a couple of times they might be abducted by some totally different kind of alien who has a different looking craft who might treat them differently. And in some of these cases, like the one group, it seems like one group is working to like figure out what the other group is doing, or like they're working. So he described, Dan Wright's perspective was that we're dealing with multiple groups of entities with overlapping yet differing agendas. And so part of what they're doing is they're maybe changing us in some way, or they're tracking our genetics. I mean, obviously there's this whole hybridization thing that's, if you read Bud Hopkins' research, he gets a lot into that, but which is creating a being that looks like a mix of a human and an alien, and then the later stage hybrids are more human looking. But so there's this process of the hybridization, following family lines across generations, and some of the implants might be for our protection, because if we're like a prize specimen, you know, then they're going to want to make sure nothing bad is happening to us, or like if there's like a health issue, they need to come down and pick us up for a checkup or something. So I mean, there's a whole lot of different reasons why we might have implants, and people tend to go to the most sinister, but I think overall I tend to see it as more of a kind of something that it's more like a scientist studying an animal, which maybe in a lot of cases is for the benefit of the population, that species that the animal is a member of. So
I guess the question following that is why? Because the only reason we care about the health of a cow, you know, it isn't good reasons. Right. So I guess, and I don't want to do what you just said, most people do, but it raises the question, like, unless we're pets or food, what's the purpose, you know, or something that they made. I kind of believe in like Zachariah Stitchin or Stitchin's theory, where we're, you know, we aren't from here, and I just it sounds right to me. It sounds like, yeah, you know, we're not really here. We're not, and we don't if you think about it, as humans, we're not really built for survival. If we weren't as smart as we were, we wouldn't. There's no way we would survive. It's not even practical. It's not even practical. We don't have enough fur. We have no fur. You know, we would die. We wouldn't. So it stands to reason, in my mind at least, that we're not from here in the first place. So kind of make you wonder if we're either an ant farm of some variety, you know, like a zoo, or if we're a pet or some kind of just, I guess I'm a nihilist a little bit, and I don't believe that we are as important as most people believe that they are. I don't think we're unimportant. I just don't believe that we hold the level of prestige that I don't think we've earned that level of prestige that we give ourselves. So in my mind, it sounds like we're some type of cattle or something not fun, something not awesome, you know? But that's just my personal belief. I don't know, man. That's just, it seems plausible to me.
I will say, my educational background is in biology. I have a 4-year degree, a BA in ecology, evolution, and behavior. So I will say that from a genetic and a fossil standpoint, there is a lot of evidence that we are, you know, we're related to the apes and whatever. We're related to like the great apes in Africa. But that doesn't mean that that someone didn't come along and do some tinkering. You know, you know, so it's positive. I can't say that we're from elsewhere, but perhaps certain aspects of our genetics have been changed, or something, that we might not be a completely like left to its own devices, like we just evolved on our own. I mean, there's certainly room for someone to have done something, to have had some hand in our evolution.
Yeah, and let me clarify for the ones that think I'm crazy. I don't fully believe that it came out that I believe that we're straight from, just as we are from another place. I don't believe that, but I do. Yeah. The tinkering thing, for the people that aren't familiar with Stitchin's work, tinkering, messing with stuff, genetic tinkering, and I like that word. That was perfect for this subject. It sounds to me like we're not quite not 100% like built
Yeah,
for
it
this.
seems like evolution's being like guided somewhere,
Yeah.
it's like being guided by an unseen force, what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so that doesn't make sense.
Man, that's you've got some interesting. So what do you do day to day? Like what's the most recent project you've been working on? Like what are you working on now?
Lately, it's been playing a lot of Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition on the computer. Um, not a whole lot going on right now. I mean, I, I, I've been watching a lot of YouTube, but Andrew Yang, love him.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lex Friedman. He's got this artificial intelligence podcast. There's a lot of philosophers and scientists
Yes.
and stuff on there. But I kind of like do my art when I'm motivated to. Last time I really did any was like a few months ago. I did just some sketches and like some like hybrid alien faces, kind of loosely based on the beings from the Travis Walton case, which were the small fetus-like beings, not quite a gray, but because they had like pupil and all, where the gray usually has a solid black eye. But just like whatever I feel inspired to do. But yeah, over the years, I've certainly done a ton of reptilians, and there's the praying mantis and the grays and so forth.
That actually reminds me. So watching one of your interviews, you mentioned that the grays is a rough term for various different aliens that look kind of like that. So have you ever heard of, I think it's called the West Virginia Goblin story or something like that?
Mm.
So
The Hopkinsville case, something.
something like
There
that.
was like in the like early 50s. There was a family stuck in like
Yeah.
their house, and
Yeah.
these little goblin creatures came.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
What would you make of that?
That was unique because I don't think there's been, as far as I know, another case where beings exactly matching that description have been seen. But you do have, if you look through the whole UFO phenomenon, you see often beings that look like like tons of different beings that look like variations on a gray, dozens of different reptilian types, although they're not nearly as common as the grays. You've got human looking beings, but even among them, there's different varieties. You've got different kinds of praying mantis types. But those goblins, there's a few beings that kind of vaguely resemble them. But yeah, with the huge ears, as far as I know, that's the only case where there's the beings with
Yeah.
the big goblin ears. So that was an interesting case, and I don't know what to make of it.
It's a very terrifying documentary. Like it freaked. I watched that one. Oh God, it's probably 2 years from now. Maybe 3 years ago at this point. But I still distinctly I watch documentaries like twice a day, and I still remember that one. I've forgotten some that I've watched 3 days ago, but that one was very odd and they were very scared, like insanely scared. And one thing I know about fear is that while it can definitely be considered some type of like mass hysteria, there's a difference when you're in a time where if you say this out loud, because that was a long time ago and superstition wasn't really it's barely accepted now, but it was not accepted then. You're like, demons first thing demons, burn them, so to go to go out and openly say that stuff like they did kind of it shows that they're very very scared, also very brave but insanely scared at the same time. So I kind of gave credence to that case because of the way they reacted to it. But yeah, man, I don't know. Diddy, what do you got, man?
I think, I think it's awesome, David. I mean, I really appreciate you coming and sharing this with bro. And for one, man, I apologize. I don't want to sound like I'm I totally believe in what you're saying, bro. I think it's totally true. I just coming back, I think the distinction we make between mind and matter and it's not as dualistic as I think that we make it out to be. So, I really agree with what you were saying about, some type of higher intelligence or higher form of consciousness that is kind of distorting matter to make it seem like it is these different phenomena. But I totally believe in what you're and the things that you said, bro. And I really appreciate you sharing that story with us.
Yeah, and and it makes me wonder, like, for somebody that has more experience in this than me and Diddy, what would you tell people that are on the fence? Like, what's the best thing somebody can do for themselves, and based off of what you hypothetically think this whole all the alien things that are happening, and there's more now, whatever you think the purpose is in that, what would you tell somebody else to facilitate that purpose or to combat that purpose?
I guess my general advice for experiencers, which is kind of like people who have abduction or contact or whatever, experiencer is sort of a general term, is to just kind of roll with it. And, it's like the old rule still applies, like eliminate the mundane before proceeding to the extraordinary, and question everything and live with the question. I mean, keep the question open, but at the same time, don't deny your own experiences. If there's, because I would be, I mean, I know what I experienced. I know what I saw as far as the plants moving and so forth, but I'm not going to, even though in my own mind, I think, okay, there was probably some kind of interdimensional primate in there. It's like I have to keep it open. Okay, like I don't know that for sure. All I know is, so I got to separate the interpretation and the beliefs from what the actual experience was. So I can't deny my experience, but at the same time, I have to keep an open mind about the possibilities, and I have to question everything. Like did it really happen as I remember? I'm pretty sure it did, but it's like, just kind of roll with it, I guess.
Yeah. So it's like a balancing act between logic and being open-minded at the same time.
Yeah.
So being real with yourself, I guess, essentially is what it sounds like, which is something, I don't know, David, if you've watched our other 2 episodes, but we preach that nonstop. But so essentially just being real with yourself is what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're good. David, that was amazing, dude. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I hope to have you on again.
Yes, sir.
In a couple months or something, and
Cool.
see some of your new work. Do you mind sending me all the links to some of the that one resource place where you said they transcribed everything? Do you mind sending me a link to that?
Yeah, I'll send you whatever you need for the illustrations or whatever.
Okay, cool. All right, man. Thank you very much.
Take care.
See you later.
Thank you, David.
Diddy.
Yes, sir.
So, thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. I liked him.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think?
I believe in, bro. I think I definitely believe that's for sure. You know what I mean? Like I was saying, bro, I think stories.
Diddy, your audio is so shit.
It's really bad. Is it horrible?
Yes. Yes. It was terrible. I text you. I don't know if you text me back, but I text you and said, hey, your audio sucks.
I tried to fix it, bro. I don't know.
It's worse than it's ever been.
Hold on.
Okay, guys, we're just gonna kick Diddy off the podcast. We're just gonna remove him from the podcast. It's gonna be Josh.
I gotta get a laptop, bro.
Look at this poverty. I gotta get a laptop. I got a Samsung S6. Say something.
Is it better?
Yeah, it's a little better. So go ahead, talk.
Hello, can you hear me? It's a little better.
Have you ever had a dream that you want him to do you so much you could do anything?
Yes.
No, I just
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. No, I believe him. I gotta say, I just think, bro, I think ties into a lot of different stuff, bro. But I think with the alien abduction stuff, man, I think that stuff is, like I said, I think the mind and matter thing is we separate it too much, bro. I think it's more together and connected than we think, you know. So whether this stuff is happening in the head or it's not, it's still a real phenomenon. You know what I mean? Like you said, bro,
I think a lot of people tend to believe that something is less real because you're not physically there. And that ties into people's perception of what reality actually is. Like, just because my hand doesn't touch a thing doesn't, heat's real. Do you need to see it? You know it's there. You know what I mean? If you heat up a bottle of water, but you know, you have a heat source and heat rises and heats up the bottle of water and you never feel it, you can tell that the water's getting hot by what the water does, but you know the heat exists because of the water's reacting to it. So we need, it's funny because we need to be able to actually see a thing for it to be real, you know? And I think that's actually a big flaw in our, you know, in our psyche as humans.
Yeah, it's a huge flaw, bro, because most of reality we don't really see it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, we really don't see the most of the things that's going on, bro. Like that's you know, we don't see things on that kind of level. So like, you know, people say seeing is believing, bro. Like I believe that to a certain extent, but it's not necessarily true because, you know, I was listening to this guy on the hall from Bam. He was saying how people were listening to him too. He was saying how like evolution had geared us to not really see the complete truth of reality. You know what I mean? We see things that are going to help assist the survival of our physical organism, not so much seeing the complete truth of what's going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Whew. Fucking crazy episode. Diddy, who do you want to have? What do you want to do next episode? I've been thinking about some things. Do you have anybody specifically that you'd like to, like any type of human being you'd like to have on? You'd like to have on there?
I was really interested in something like I mean, I know this would be hard, bro, with the KKK.
Yeah, you think they're ready? You think already?
I mean, you know, I know we can do it, but I don't know if it's going to be, if they're ready for it, man. You know,
it's going to be a rough 2 episodes because I have to do them and then the opposite, whatever that is. Yeah. Fuck. All right. Well, guys, listen, we don't know what we're going to give you next week. Whatever we feel like, that's what. So like, subscribe. We're on literally every podcast outlet. So Anchor, Spotify, we're on all of them. I'll leave links. I made t-shirts and socks and hoodies and all sorts of stuff. Please, I make like $2 off of them. Please buy them. Please buy them. Get you some swag right quick, night. You know what I mean? God damn. What we doing? what the fuck we doing? Fuck. Anyways, but yeah, so we will see you guys later. Did he say bye? Here's how Diddy's gonna say bye. Watch. Go ahead. Say bye, Diddy.
Guys, have a good one. Can you hear it?
See y'all later.